So she spake, but I answered and said unto her, Devise now thyself the ambush to take this ancient one divine, lest by any chance he see me first, or know of my coming, and avoid me. For a god is hard for a mortal man to quell. So spake I, and straightway the fair goddess made answer, Yea now, sir, I will plainly tell thee all. So often as the sun is his course stands high in mid-heaven, then forth from the brine comes the ancient one of the sea, whose speech is sooth. Before the breath of the west wind he comes, and the sea's dark ripple covers him. And when he is got forth, he lies down to sleep in the hollow of the caves. And around him the seals, the brood of the fair daughter of the brine, sleep all in a flock, stolen forth from the grey sea water. And bitter is the scent they breathe of the deep of the salt sea. There I will lead thee at the breaking of the day, and couch you all orderly. So do thou choose diligently 3 of thy company, the best thou hast in thy decked ships, and I will tell thee all the magic arts of that old man. First, he will number the seals and go over them, but when he has told their tale and beheld them, he will lay them down in the midst, as a shepherd mid the sheep of his flock. So soon as ever ye shall see him couched, even then mind you of your might and strength, and hold him there, despite his eagerness and striving to be free. And he will make assay, and take all manner of shapes of things that creep upon the earth, of water likewise, and of fierce fire burning. But do ye grasp him steadfastly, and press him yet the more, and at length when he questions thee in his proper shape, as he was when ye first saw him laid to rest, then, hero, hold strong thy hands, and let the ancient one go free, and ask him, which of the gods is hard upon thee, and as touching thy return, how thou may goest over the teeming deep. Therewith she dived beneath the heaving sea, but I betook me to the ships where they stood in the sand, and my heart was darkly troubled as I went. But after I had come down to the ship and to the sea, and we had made ready our supper, and immortal night had come on, then did we lay us to rest upon the sea beach. So soon as early dawn shone forth, the rosy-fingered, in that hour I walked by the shore of the wide sea, praying instantly to the gods, and I took with me 3 of my company, in whom I trusted most for every enterprise. Okay, here's something I grapple with often with Greek mythology. And I don't subscribe in one direction or another. I find both fascinating and how people interpret things. Not that there's only 2 directions to do it. What am I talking about? Quit being cryptic, Landon. Here we go. The idea of personified gods, monsters, etc. This is really the first story, even though it's not occurring before our eyes. It's Menelaus recounting the story, of a kind of supernatural event. Eidothee is telling him how to capture Proteus, and says that when you do, go through these, steps in order to see him first, and then he'll be here, and when he's there, then do this. But when you get a hold of him, here's what you expect: that he will take all manner of shapes, things that creep upon the earth, of water likewise, and fierce fire burning, ... And at length, when he questions thee in his proper shape, ... It goes on. That this sea god, Proteus, can take different shapes. He's a shapeshifter. That's an exciting thing for our big budget adaptation of this. But do we focus on the supernatural, or do we give a more real world, historically grounded account of this? I find this to be a fascinating realm of interpretation, especially now as so many of these Greek tales and gods and monsters are being retold today through different lenses, often a feminist lens. How some of them retain the kind of monstery funness of Greek mythology, the fantasy elements, if you want to call it that, because that is what appeals. I think that's the gateway for a lot of people into Greek mythology. I don't know if it's synonymous for everybody, but for a long time, when you mentioned the words Greek mythology to me, I saw Perseus chopping the head off of Medusa from Clash of the Titans. I grew up on that. And, Medusa, this big snake monster, was exciting to me. Maybe for some of you, it's Jason fighting the skeleton army, or the Kraken, or Pegasus. There's all of these fantastical beasts and situations and monsters that exist in this world. But that's not the only way to interpret this stuff. I don't know exactly how we would interpret this sea god being a shapeshifter. Maybe we depict him as a man possessed, someone who speaks in different tongues without getting problematic about it, someone who essentially displays different personalities, volatile personalities, one after the other, in a kind of alarming way that might put somebody off. I really loved how Mary Renault in The King Must Die, the story of Theseus being brought up from a child all the way through his time in Crete, going through the labyrinth, how instead of depicting the Minotaur as an actual monster, the Minotaur is embodied by a character named Asterion, who is essentially a ritualistic figure of a warrior that wears a bull head and fights in this palatial arena. That the labyrinth itself isn't exactly a maze in the way that we've simplified it over the years, that it is just this incredibly complex palace that has so many different corridors, and the place where you fight the Minotaur happens to be at the center of it, but it is not like a giant maze that then you find your way to the center where the Minotaur is, and hopefully you survive. Guess what? You're not going to, unless you're Theseus. But the fact that Mary Renault is taking a very different approach to going, okay, we're going to set aside the fantastical elements, and we're going to focus specifically on making this more historical. How do we account for the dual lineage of Theseus by having his father, who had blown in to town and got his mother pregnant, but at the same time is also maybe the son of Poseidon? How do we account for both of those things to be true in the same thing? And she does a great job of acknowledging the gods, but never having them directly depicted. And in Mary Renault's books, she, more than anyone else I've seen, really shows how the dedication to gods in this time and place is a religious thing. The way that Theseus will essentially pray to the god Poseidon for guidance and put his hand on the ground, because Poseidon is the earth shaker, and look for a sign or a symbol, and not getting an explicit one in the fantastical way that some stories choose to take it, but that in his belief in Poseidon and his lineage, does a ritual or sacrificial thing, and from that interprets something that could or could not be a sign from the gods. And I'm not advocating in one direction or another. Being, a man in my mid-40s, I still thoroughly enjoy both. Give me monsters, man. Give me a shape-shifting dude who's going from a sea serpent to a fire salamander to whatever the hell that Menelaus is trying to hold down here. I want to see that. That sounds fun and exciting. But the challenge and the other fun aspect of it is, how else can we interpret this? And what does that interpretation bring? What is that bringing out of the story? I find all that to be also exciting in a very different kind of way. Okay, I really went off on this episode. I didn't mean to, but it looks like Menelaus and his men are getting ready to capture Proteus and find their way home. So shall we continue tomorrow to see if Menelaus and company will succeed in their mission here, or complete his monologue, which has been going on for a couple days now. So join me here tomorrow as we learn more about Menelaus. Until then, okay, goodbye. Odyssey is part of the Gruntwork Podcast Network. The show is produced, edited, and hosted by Landon Solano. The original text of The Odyssey, written by Homer. Theme song by Neuroflow. You can support this show and other shows like it by going to patreon.com/gruntworkpod. Thank you for listening. See you tomorrow.